And then the next week I had a lump in my neck. I had this lump here and I went to the doctor to get it checked out and they kind of treated it like it was a swollen gland. Pandemic hit and then I went back in because this lump hadn't gone away and they decided to do a biopsy on it and unfortunately I had cancer, throat cancer. Now, because of COVID and stuff, I hadn't been to the dentist, I hadn't had my teeth cleaned. So I decided to go to my dentist and get checked out, get my teeth cleaned. And I had a crown, I had a filling back there they wanted to replace. Man, it started hurting really bad. My wife and I were going to dinner. We were driving about an hour from where we live. It was my nephew's birthday and we were going to go to dinner with him. And I got there and I told my wife, I go, man, if this gets any worse, man, it's really sore. Anyway, it got so painful I had to leave the dinner. I got physically ill. It hurt so bad. And he told me basically what they did was they'd hit the lower mandibular nerve, which is a nerve that runs along the whole on each side, right? I was doing pretty well through most of that year, but not great. I was a shadow of what I once was as a player, kind of making me kind of want to go, I'm done here. I can't do this anymore. I can't do it how I used to do it. I don't want to do it. The last 6 months to 8 months, all of a sudden, I felt like I was firing on all cylinders again. I said, I'm stronger now at 66 and definitely more efficient than I was at 26. So 40 years ago, I'm stronger than I was. So I learned something through this too. So not everything has to be a negative. You don't have to come out of it wounded.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the show. I am so excited to introduce today's guest to you, who really doesn't need any introduction because you've heard him on so many films and so many different big band records. I grew up listening to his solo album while I delivered newspapers, actually, and just so honored to have him on the show and have him share his story. And so, Wayne Bergeron, thank you so much for being here on Trust the Process.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. I'm glad we finally made this happen.
Yeah, just so grateful for your time.
Pardon my room here. That's still a work in progress here, but it's quiet.
It's quiet. Oh, I'm glad I don't have a 360 camera in here because my room is not the greatest either. So that makes two of us. But as I was telling you just a little bit before, I started the show just to kind of give musicians who have gone through injury an opportunity to share their experience, and for two reasons. First of all, I believe that all of us musicians have really impactful experiences when we go through injury, and that can help other people. The second reason being that sharing those stories can really help other people feel a sense of community surrounding the topic of injury, because it's not until you go through it, I feel like it's not as talked about, unfortunately. And so what has your experience been with injury? I know that we talked before about some dental things that you had going on. I know that was a thing.
There's been a few things more recently within the past 4 years. The main thing that happened to me was at the beginning of the pandemic. The pandemic hit and, all our lives kind of shut down and Absolutely. All my work went away. I watched a year's worth of work, recording sessions I had booked and out of town travel things.
Oh man.
All just go away. And so it sends you into a little bit of a panic.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, like, oh my God, it's a lot of money we're talking about, and
yeah.
And then the next week I had a lump in my neck. I had this lump here and I went to the doctor to get it checked out and they kind of treated it like it was a swollen gland. And this is in January of 2020. This would be actually before the pandemic actually hit. And they treated it like a swollen gland anyway. Pandemic hit, and then I went back in because this lump hadn't gone away, and they decided to do a biopsy on it. And unfortunately, I had cancer, throat cancer. Not really in my throat, but at the base of my tongue. HPV P16 squamous. P16 positive squamous cell carcinoma, which is very common. It's kind of an epidemic. They have a vaccine for it now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so kids won't have it in the future, so it's part of the vaccine package. But and it's something that's it's kind of like herpes. We all got it. It's how it manifests itself. You know what I mean?
Right.
Either it manifests itself or it doesn't. So HPV is like that. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I do play one on TV, so you can take you can take my advice for
Sure.
what it's worth. But I was told at the time, of course, my work had gone away. Now I have cancer. I had to come home and tell my wife, but they did tell me. They said, if you're going to get cancer, this is kind of one of the cancers you want to get. We know a lot about this. We have a very good track record with curing this through 2 or 3 different things they can do. So they said 90% plus chance of success. So that was relieving, of course. But he said, untreated, it will kill you quickly. So in case I was thinking of trying something, alternative medicine or something, they were trying to let me know, we got this. So I said, okay, well, let's go, whatever you want to do. So
Let's get this. Yeah.
I said, what are we going to do with the, he said, well, it could be surgery, chemo, radiation, or all three, or one of those things. Usually it's at least 2 of them. So a month later or so, I went in for my meeting. It's the only time my wife was ever able to go in there with me. And we found out I didn't have to have surgery. Now I started talking to people at this point, and most people had had the surgery, which would probably be career ending for me.
Oh man.
I would think, because they do a thing called a radical neck extraction. So I think they should change the name of that to something more technical. But it's basically they slice you open and they pull out, all your stuff here, anywhere that cancer could go. And then they do chemo and radiation, 35 radiations, 7 weeks of chemo. So when I went in there, they said I didn't need surgery. So man, I was relieved, as you can imagine,
Yeah, totally.
But I did do 7 weeks of chemo and 35 radiation, so 5 days a week. Good news, there was no traffic because of COVID, so I could go to Hollywood, Kaiser, Permanente, and go get my treatments, every day without any traffic. We could get there very quickly, so that made it a little bit easier to deal with. But it was, very soon after I started the treatments, a couple of weeks in, it became very difficult to play. So I played right up to the treatments. As a matter of fact, I did a recording session, at home session for Goodwin. This thing called the reset we did. It was the day before I started my treatments. I recorded that, and I was real strong. My chops were strong. And but about 2 weeks into the treatments, my throat started getting really sore because of where they're radiating. My taste buds were going away, and my saliva glands were getting damaged, and it started hurting to play. And then I was also very nauseous from chemo.
Yeah.
So I kind of just gave up on playing. I said, I'm not even going to worry about this right now. There's no work anyway. There's nothing to worry about. So anyway, it kicked my ass pretty good. But I took about 3 weeks off, and they ended up adjusting my meds so I didn't get quite so sick. And I said, well, I got to play, man. So I started just playing every day in a mute. I couldn't play high. The highest note I could play was a G on top of the staff, which is an octave and a half lower than I can play now.
Right.
And it was very painful. But I would just play up to there, and I would just practice every day. And it's funny, I told my doctors, one of the things that was hopeful for me was when I told my doctor I was playing the trumpet at 5 weeks into the treatments. He goes, excuse me, he goes, you're playing the trumpet? And he goes, dude, what planet are you from? He goes, because at this point in the treatments, people are really jacked up.
Yeah.
They've got a feeding tube in, they're being fed through a bag, which I wanted none of. I just decided that's not going to happen to me. So it was hard to eat. My throat hurt. My taste buds were gone. So everything I ate tasted horrible. But my wife, researched all this stuff. She made me these plant-based shakes with a lot of calories. And anyway, I managed to survive it without getting the feeding tube. And then as my, when the treatments were finished, I was pretty jacked up. I was like bright red and burnt, and to a crisp kind of, and in a lot of pain. But I was playing through the whole thing, and I had a recording session exactly 2 months after that I took. My last treatment was June 29th, 2020. I had a recording session on August 30th for the Rise of Gru Minions movie.
Oh, nice.
Now, this composer, I did all those Despicable Me movies all for the same composer. And I know how he writes. And I played first trumpet on all these things. So I knew it was going to be hard. And I took it. I said, well, let me just take it. If I'm not okay, I'll cancel. Or I'll just say, put me on fourth trumpet. Whatever. So I could make that money. Anyway, as the weeks went off and this started subsiding, I started kind of getting my chops back a little bit. It wasn't great, but I was playing again. And anyway, when we got to the recording session, I had told my colleagues what was going on, and they were, they'll help me with it, whatever I needed. And it was he written an easier score. It wasn't wasn't as hard. So I was able to play most of it. And there was some piccolo trumpet, and I had one of my colleagues, John Lewis, play that because I wasn't going to be able to play it. I knew it was going to hurt.
It's a whole different animal. Yeah.
There was one high thing though. There was one like high G this guy wrote. And I asked one of my colleagues, I was with classical players, and I said, hey, can you cover this? And they're like, no.
Oh, no.
Because I could do it on piccolo trumpet, but I don't think that's what they want. So I'll try to muster it up, and so I put my mute in, and while they were talking, I'm sitting here with my horn like this, I'm going with a mute in, and I'm going, I'll show you exactly what I was doing. So I would half valve to make it quiet so nobody could hear me, and I'd go, and I was kind of just get this note, and I was kind of, you half valve it, it gets real quiet.
Right.
And I was kind of getting it, but I hadn't played a high G in 2-3 months, basically, And then we got ready to start, and they said, oh, hey, hang on a second, Wayne, we're going to overdub you. And I'm going, oh, shit. Now I have to do it with everybody watching, which was going to be weird. And so they played the take, and then they go, okay, let's get you now, Wayne. And I somehow, man, I threw up a prayer, and I nailed this thing somehow. Like just by the pure, even when I was holding it, I was going, oh my God, I'm doing it. And so it was really the turning point for me. It wasn't the best I'd ever played or the best high G I've ever played, but I did it. And I said, I'm going to be okay. It's going to take me some rehabilitation, but I'll get going again here. And I kind of did. Well, fast forward to, since we're talking about injury and stuff, fast forward to 1 year later. My first treatment was May 11th, 2020. Now, because of COVID and stuff, I hadn't been to the dentist. I hadn't had my teeth cleaned. So I decided to go to my dentist and get checked out, get my teeth cleaned. And I had a crown. I had a filling back there they wanted to replace. So they went back there and they numbed me up. And they said, this tooth's actually cracked. So we're going to do a crown. You're already numb. So they hooked me up for a crown. They put a crown in. Another day in the office for them, right? And this is May 11th, 2021, exactly to the day 1 year later.
Oh, wow.
And as the Novocaine was wearing off throughout the day, you're always sore when you come from something like that. It's a lot of trauma to your jaw and your teeth and stuff. And man, it started hurting really bad. My wife and I were going to dinner. We were driving about an hour from where we live. It was my nephew's birthday, and we we're going to go to dinner with him. And I got there, and I told my wife, I go, man, if this gets any worse, man, it's really sore. Anyway, it got so painful, I had to leave the dinner. I got physically ill. It hurt so bad. I mean, I was just extreme nerve pain. And I didn't, so we called the dentist, the emergency line. And of course, they got back to me 3 hours later. In the meantime, I'd gotten my other doctor give me some pain meds, some codeine and stuff. And anyway, long story short, they had hit the lower, I went to a new dentist, which I'm a new dentist now. And he told me basically what they did was they'd hit the lower mandibular nerve, which is a nerve that runs along the whole on each side, right? So this one controls everything from here no, this side, here to here. I'm looking backwards on here. So here to here. So I was numb from here to here, all the way around here. Like my teeth, you could have done dental work on me 2 weeks later. I couldn't feel anything. Now I could play, I could sort of play. I couldn't feel. So I didn't know what note was going to come out. Like, because it's all by feel. I go to hit a high C and a D would come out, or a B flat. So, and I had remote recordings to do. And so fortunately, because of modern technology, if I missed a note, I could just do it till I got it. So I was kind of figuring it out. And my new dentist put me on a steroid pack for 2 weeks. And he did all the stuff to measure what I was feeling. And he goes, well, believe it or not, it's going to come back. He said it will come back, but it's going to take probably a year to 2 years to completely come back.
Yeah, nerves are different that way.
And I'm going, oh my God. And so he said if they'd severed the nerve, you'd have to have surgery to have it put back together, and maybe that would work. Which involves pulling all these teeth out, lifting the nerve out, repairing the nerve, putting it back in, putting dental implants in. That's what would be involved. So sounds like another career ending. But it did start, I learned to play on it, and then I was doing pretty well through most of that year, but not great. I was a shadow of what I once was as a player, but I could play, I could do most things I had to do. I turned down a lot of work. I'd find out what the music was, and I would just say I wasn't available, even though I was available, but I just didn't want to go in and not be able to. One of the movies was the movie Babylon.
Oh, yeah.
I was called for that right after this dental thing happened, and I couldn't do it. So they got some other people to do it. Anyway, a year later, though, they were still working on it. So I came in and did some stuff a year later when I could play. But I still wasn't 100%. And it's been like the last 6 months to 8 months, all of a sudden, I felt like I was firing on all cylinders again. I was in Casper, Wyoming, and I was doing a gig with Gordon Goodwin's Big Phat band, which you saw at ITG.
Yeah.
And that band is always the barometer of how I'm playing, because I know how I used to be able to play the book, and I'd been kind of struggling through it, getting through it, but not, very frustrating, kind of making me kind of want to go, I'm done here. I can't do this anymore. If I can't do it how I used to do it, I don't want to do it. I don't want to be put down to the minor leagues, because of a big league injury, But we were doing that gig and we were in high altitude, and I was really worried about it. I'm going, the air is thin, my lip, And halfway through that gig, I was thinking to myself, man, this is going really well so far. Like, I'm playing better than I've played in a long time. And I felt my confidence levels. At this point, I'm also taking beta blockers because of my nerves.
Sure.
It's freaking me out. So I started taking Enderal. Just a lot of classical musicians do this for auditions and stuff. And it really helped me. It kept me from panicking. And so anyway, make a long story short, by the middle of the gig, my colleague, Dan Fernero, next to me goes, dude. And I go, don't talk to me right now. We'll talk after the gig. And I got through that concert, and it's the best I'd played in a couple of years. I felt, this is what it used to feel like. Because I thought maybe I'm getting old. Maybe this thing, and I'm 66, and maybe it's catching up with me. Maybe I can't do what I used to be able to do when I was 40 or 35, And so that was, for me, was like, oh man. And it's been okay ever since. I'm still, like every trumpet player, I still have crappy days.
Right,
but it's not because my chops aren't functioning. And this finally came back. It was numb a year ago, still right here in the middle. Because the nerve heals from the outside in. And he told me the last place to come back is right here, where I need it most. So, but it did finally, and it took over 2 years to really come back. So anyway, it's kind of a boring story, but
no, not at all. Actually,
but it feels good to me. I like talking about it because I also learned a lot from going through these things. I've had to relearn to play twice within 3 years, basically relearn how to play. And I took that time, and this is what I recommend for a lot of people. If something like that happens, we have to take time off. But when you come back, there's no rush. So you can undo some bad habits you developed your whole life. So I took a lot of lessons online from like some pretty heavy trumpet teachers, a couple from Alan Mazzuti, and Vinny DiMartino and some of my colleagues here, Jerry Hay, and people like that really talked me through and gave me some things to do. So I thought, okay, I'm just gonna focus on the mechanics and the basics of how to make sound, tone production, and I think all of that kind of helped me a lot. And I undid some things I used to do. I don't do anymore. I think I'm playing easier now than I was before cancer. I'm playing more efficiently, and I was telling somebody on a 9-line masterclass not that long ago that looking back at when I was like on Maynard Ferguson's band when I was 26 years old. I was 26. I'm a pretty strong player, and I said I'm stronger now at 66 and definitely more efficient than I was at 26. So 40 years ago, I'm stronger than I was. So I learned something through this too. So not everything has to be a negative. You don't have to come out of it wounded. I just kind of put the time in and focused on what I needed to do. And I ask a lot of questions, man. I watch my colleagues play. My friend Rob Shear, who's a younger trumpet player in town here, 44 years old, and one of the finest trumpet players to ever do what I do in this town. I just been working with him the last couple of weeks on a couple of movies. We did The Simpsons this morning, and he kind of helped me and talked about some stuff. And I was sitting with him today, and he was kind of high-fiving me a little bit. He knows everything I've been through, and we had a really good couple of weeks of playing, and so it feels good to be on the other side of this.
Absolutely.
Now I just got to keep my health together,
Yeah.
So I can keep doing this for another few years,
Right. Oh man, what a story! And thank you so much for being willing to share it. Yeah.
In 2009, I also went through. I was going through a kind of a bad divorce, and you go through divorce. There's a lot of stress and emotions, and people tend to get sick and lose a lot of weight. I lost a lot of weight really quick, and even from the cancer. When I started my treatments, I went from 239 to 182.
Whoa.
In weeks.
Yeah.
And so when I got going through my divorce, it was kind of the same. It wasn't that extreme, but I lost a lot of weight. And what happens, trumpet players or brass players don't think about this, but when you lose weight rapidly, especially, you don't only lose a gut and some physical strength here, your face gets smaller. So now your lips are thinner. So these are the reeds for the trumpet. Now you're playing on different reeds. So everything feels jacked up. So that what went on through the cancer thing. I was having to deal with the weight loss and the thinner lips. And in 2009, I developed a cyst on my lip because I was so weak and I was working so hard to play that I was playing very inefficiently. And I was just using a ton of pressure. And I caused the cyst on my top lip, which I had cortisone injected into a few times. I had to take 7 weeks off that time and let it go away if it was going to go away. And with the help of Bobby Shue, and once again, and some other, Bobby Shue is always when I'm in trouble, he's my go-to phone call. He just is, because he's the Yoda of the trumpet, we call him.
He's the guru.
He knows everything. He's the most scientific trumpet. There's a lot of great trumpet teachers, but he is the most scientific trumpet teacher. He knows a lot about the human body. He's had tons of doctors' students, and he reads medical. If you go to his place, he's got medical journals on the thing. He always jokes, I could probably do a lung transplant. Because it wouldn't be pretty, but I could get it done.
Right.
So he knows a lot about what's going on. So he kind of comes from the homeopathic side too, do this, that, but also do this. There's a lot of things you have to do to get blood in here and get the lactic acid out of the muscles. And so I did everything he told me to do. I did a lot of water therapy in the shower. I'd let it hit this thing with a shower massager, and I'd get a shower, it's smaller. But then it would come back. But then I knew all this stuff was doing some good. So within, that amount of time, I'd relearned to play 3 times really, because that threw me for a loop. But every time I came back a little bit better, because I'd learned something from asking questions. It's really important to ask questions and not be afraid to ask your colleagues or people you respect or people that feel you can do things better than you could do. Get that information from them. It really, it really, the people that helped me, man, I have Vinny DiMartino is really high on that list too. Do you know who that is? Yeah, well,
Oh
you
yeah,
saw me play with him.
I got to meet him
What a
at Freelance.
fantastic player and a really great guy and
Absolutely.
fantastic teacher, man. He just knows a lot of stuff. And I did Zoom lessons with him, and he watched me play and go, hey, try this. He gave me some things to play and different things to think about while I was playing. And I learned some new stuff that I play differently than I used to. So
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Horrible thing to go through, but I learned a lot.
Absolutely. And that's the whole reason why I do this show. I mean, when my injury happened in 2022, in August of 2022, and it didn't really hit me. Actually, it was kind of ironic. I shared this on the show last season, but it didn't hit me until 9 months later. I was actually at ITG, just kind of trying to feel like I could fit in as an injured trumpet player. But
and what was your injury though? I don't even know.
It was a muscle tear. The beginning of a muscle tear. Overuse. I was playing cornet on a tour with a New Orleans style band, and playing my heart out, and came home, and I guess I played a little bit too much of my heart out and learned so much, since then. But it hit me while I was at ITG, just how much I had learned and continued to learning, right? And how impactful this experience has been holistically in my life. And that's the whole reason why I love just hearing people's stories, is because I'm not the only one that's the case for,
Yeah. Through tragedy comes knowledge sometime.
Absolutely.
And we all think we're invincible when we're young. So I try to share with younger trumpet players, because I was I played like a pig when I was a kid. Man, I was aggressive and I worked really hard, and I just, it's cramming the horn down my throat, and it was working at the time. But, there's not much longevity with that. The trumpet players, like the great lead trumpet players from our past, from the 40s, and they all burned out pretty quick. They played hard. They played bigger mouthpieces. They worked harder. And there was a great payoff. They sounded great, but we've gotten a lot smarter about how to play a brass instrument. And most of the books that we play out of, there's an Arbenz book over there. When was that written? The late 1800s?
Something like that.
I think we've learned a couple of things since then. There's some great information in that book.
Absolutely.
But we used to use an abacus at one point too, now here we are on a computer. So we have to think that we've learned something so we can make this easier and make it better. A lot of people like to go to everything about the past is better. Old horns are better. Oh, you just got to play out of the Clark book and the Arbenz book and listen what Herbert R. Clark wrote. Well, Herbert R. Clark was a cornetist. It's been gone for a long time. He hated
the trumpet, actually.
He doesn't have to play with Gordon Goodwin's band.
Right.
And do the things, the demands that are on today's players. There's great information in there that we need to look at, but we need to take it all with a grain of salt. Like he says in one of his descriptions, take this with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of things that they didn't know.
Yeah. And actually, something I wanted to point out on things that I've, master classes I've seen that you do online, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you teach students, you're very observant, right? Of what is going on with them personally. And then you're just experimenting with them, right? And seeing what works with them. And for me, what was a big eye opener for me, because mine was caused through overuse, was that some of the language that we use in traditional brass pedagogy or even just in the public music system, right? What we've been taught may not work for some people and gives them the wrong conceptions that lead them down the paths that are unhealthy, lead them down the paths that will lead to an overuse injury or something of that sort.
It's very, very true, man. It's I'm not traditional by any, because I never followed anybody's method or anything, but I've grasped little things that I thought that made sense to me. And I never say, I'll tell a student, hey, do this, this, and this. I go, I think this is what's happening, but let's try something here, and I'll have them either, teach them how to make a small aperture or a big aperture, or I'll have them change their horn angle a little bit. All our teeth, everything's different. We all have different teeth and lip size. And there's certain things, just like somebody saying, these guys kind of drive me nuts, guys and these teachers, guys and gals, that, that say, oh, you have to play this mouthpiece or you have to play this. Oh, you have to play a bar. If you're going to be a classical player, you need to play. That's not rubbish. I mean, there's a certain set of things that are going to work better for certain things, Piccolo trumpet's going to work better for the Brandenburg than the B-flat trumpet, okay? But, with mouthpieces and stuff, I think that a lot of young players develop embouchure problems right out of the chute because they put them on a 7C. They put a little kid on a 7C, which is not a huge mouthpiece for an adult, but for a little kid, it's a big mouthpiece. It's a this.
Yeah.
And so they don't have they can't support it. So they have to push harder to make the mouthpiece support the aperture. Right. So I think younger players should be started off on a much smaller rim and a shallower cup so they have some resistance to blow against. And I think we do them a disservice by putting them on something that's too big. Now, as they get older and their lips get bigger and they want to, and then you can start deciding what works size-wise and sound-wise. Like, there's ways you can make these things sound broader. You have to open your chops a little more. It'd be easier for me to go to a big mouthpiece to do that, right? But if you got to do it, on The Simpsons today, I was having to play high Gs and I was also having to play very classical. And so I don't have time to be switching mouthpieces in the middle of things. So I have to make it work. So the right tool for the job, I'm all for, but we do young players a disservice by starting them on equipment that's too big or too small. It's like a pair of shoes. You got to get the right size shoes on there before you can walk correctly.
Right.
And so I spend a lot of my time trying to teach that and how we make sound, actually.
Right. Absolutely.
There's a lot of misinformation out there. And I have a lot of colleagues that think I'm full of crap. And they don't listen to him. He's a witch, But, I'm a firm believer that we don't do this. We don't. I know that I don't, but it sounds like a kazoo.
Yeah.
If I don't let the instrument do anything as opposed to. Right? Get the resistance of the instrument creates a sympathetic vibration, then the lips vibrate.
Right.
Instead of them vibrating first, because if that's the case, then you're amplifying a lip buzz. Totally. Right. So the instrument is not an amplifier. Sorry, I've got up on my high horse here for a minute.
No, it's good. I mean, a lot of educators listen to the show too. And that's the reason why I like to go into those more pedagogical topics for a little bit of the interview, just for them, because a lot of them go into their careers. I mean, I'm talking as a guy who studied music education, right? We go into careers not really having discussed the health risks of misunderstood pedagogy, right?
Yeah.
So I really love that you went that deep into it. I know a lot of people out there are gonna be grateful for that.
A lot of times in a master class, I'll bring up a saxophone player, that's never played the trumpet. And I've been doing this. I tell them I want them to, like they're spitting a pea out of their mouth, or a piece of rice. Go, keep your corners firm. And then have them go. Right? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, it's not a great sound, but it's not. It's not that. It's all of a sudden it's an open tone.
Right.
And so that's how I would start a young trumpet player. I would never say the word buzz. Not that there's anything wrong with doing any of that. I mean, it's all valid.
Right.
But by telling them to do that first, a lot of trumpet players give up young because they sound so bad. Going because we're doing that, right? But if you get them to go, right, and get this space opened up, it's like you probably heard me regurgitate this, but like an oboe reed.
Yeah, yeah.
They're blowing between two reeds, and it's all vibrating, and like I said, there's a lot of people that can argue that, and I don't know, maybe they're smarter than me. Maybe that is what's happening. I don't know. I think this is what's happening. I know Mr. Bill Adam, who taught at IU. This is what I'm talking about. I never studied with him, but I've worked with many of his students. That Larry Hall being one of them, and Jerry Hay being another one, Charlie Davis. These are all great trumpet players with great sounds.
Absolutely.
How they learned, and so just by analyzing my own playing, I go, that's what's going on. I can feel that this is wide open when I'm playing. I'm not going.
Right.
I can't, I can't buzz a double high C. I'm not buzzing that. There's no way I can buzz that note. So then how am I playing it? There's got to be another set of physics involved here.
Going on.
And so anyway, it's that's pretty good, man. I just hit a double high C. It feels good
There you
again.
Go. There you go. Well, that's a win for the day. I consider that a win.
Yeah, man. So,
well, one of the things I wanted to also cover, and you kind of touched on this in some really cool ways of the going back to your injury, right? The community surrounding injury, surrounding those who have been injured. I wanted to just ask, when you were going through those times of your life, what were the reactions of your colleagues, your contractors, and I'm just curious on if the rhetoric or the kind of the response, maybe is a better word, to a musician being injured has changed from maybe when you first started on the scene to now, because I feel like the conversation is starting to gear more towards musicians' health. I think the pandemic actually spurred that in some ways. But what were people's reactions, and then how did that influence your how you went about your recovery?
Well, I mean, and not everybody, I can probably say this in any business, but there's probably a percentage of people are going, "Oh, good, he's out of the way."
Oh gosh.
Because we're all, we're all friends. I mean, all my trumpet colleagues and I are good friends, but we're competing against each other.
Yeah.
So there is a certain, there's some, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, there's some assholes out there, that would like, because their work might pick up or something. When players died here, when Joe Davis, many years ago was a great trumpet player here, when he died and George Graham died, my work picked up. Because I was working with them, and so you move up you start moving up the ladder. So there's a certain percentage of people that aren't very supportive. Sure. I don't know who they are, but I'm guessing we're going, let's get him out of the way so I can work more. I mean, let's face it, musicians can be vultures too. Most of the colleagues that I work with, I would say that my support team of the people I work with all the time were like family to me. And when I was going through my chemo and stuff, people were showing up how we had to stay outside.
Sure.
But they were coming over and bringing me soup and bringing me, Dan Fenner, he brought me soup every week because that's all I could eat, and so we look out for each other. And even when I came back to do this the Minions movie, I told my colleagues, hey, I'm not 100% here. Maybe I should just see if I can get put down on third trumpet. They go, no, I just do it. We'll cover what you can't do. Completely supportive. John Lewis and Rob Shear completely took care of me. And I was able to play a good portion of it, so I felt good about it. But I would have felt bad if they were playing everything and I'm taking the money. Yeah. Because first trumpet gets more money. So, right. So I felt my support team and my friends here, and I can just tell you by the amount of cards that I received. I don't have it in here, but I have this I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds of cards that people sent me. And my wife put it in a big collage thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
And from musicians and musicians I didn't even know, people from abroad, brass players, all my colleagues here rooting for me. So I would say it was pretty supportive, in
That's
general.
awesome.
On the surface, anyway. Maybe they're all a-holes. Maybe they wanted me to. I don't know.
Well, no, that's awesome. And one of the things that I really was looking forward to asking you, because me as a recently graduated collegiate musician, and the majority of us out there who aren't like primarily freelance musicians, or at least have like our the most of our income is coming from just playing. The thing that I was really wondering was for those musicians out there who are freelance musicians who are going through an injury. I would imagine, I mean, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I would imagine one of the fears of speaking up about it, saying like, hey, something's wrong, is that competitive nature, right, of the job. And so I was wondering if you have any advice for those people specifically who are just like, if I need to take time off, like, I'm afraid that's going to be it,
Well, when I got cancer, it was the best time to get cancer because there was no work. But you don't want to be known as injured goods. So I didn't really let the contractors know too much about it. So when I came back for that day, everybody there, my colleagues know, but the composer, the people behind the guys, they don't know that I'm going through this thing, right? So like I said, I turned down certain gigs because I don't want to go free. I don't want to be damaged goods. So I didn't necessarily tell everybody.
Sure.
What was going because of that. Even though you want to tell everybody, man, you want advice, you want help, you want. So it's a weird thing. So I would have definitely been more worried about that if the pandemic hadn't hit and I just had cancer and couldn't play, because I put you out to pasture very quick.
Interesting.
And especially me being a little bit older, I could see, you're out of sight, you're out of mind, and I still may work, I'll get brought in for things, but I'd lose my place in my pecking order here that I've worked my entire career for. It's been I didn't just arrive here and just go, oh, I'm the cat's meow and doing everything. It's been a slow, and I got started in studio work a little later than most people. And to be honest with you, when I was off Maynard Ferguson's band, I wasn't ready for this kind of work. I wasn't good enough player. But from listening to the players that were doing this work, you learn and you start taking lessons. And I studied with different players and started putting the time in to get better. So it's been a slow churn though. And it's been all those things I talked about earlier. It's been people retiring, people dying, or just people being assholes and the contractors don't want to call them anymore. That happens, you don't want to.
That'll end your career.
You want to piss your bosses off, because there's always somebody out there that can do the job.
Right.
I'd like to think I'm the only one that can do this, but that's just not true. They can get it done without me.
Yeah.
I try to make them think that that's not possible. That's when I go to work and I tell people how to go, whatever they're doing, even if they're going in for a temp job at a law firm. I go, do that job so well that they think they can't do it without you, and you will move up the ladder.
Yeah.
You make yourself, you solve problems, think, oh, wow, you're fixing things. So I do try to do that when I go into work. I try to be friendly. I try to get the music played best I possibly can, let them know I'm on their team. And, you never say, who wrote this shit? You never do that.
Yeah.
That's bad advice. No, but sometimes you take music that's not that good, and your job is to make it as good as it can be. Not everybody is Mozart, or John Williams, but you have to take what they've got there and you play it convincingly, and it can. So that's our job. Sometimes your job as a chef is to turn chicken poop into chicken salad. Somehow,
Right,
so
right.
So we do that a lot in the business here too. It's not that. I mean, most of the composers I work for are great, but every once in a while you work for somebody that's new and they don't know how to write for the trumpet, and you're having to fix everything to make it playable. But that's our job. So as far as longevity, So anyway, back to the nervousness about being injured. If you're a baseball player, and you're all of a sudden you're having a wrist problem, you don't want to be telling your coach you're going to be down in the minor leagues in no time. So, but you're going to have to take time off and try to survive it. Hopefully, it's during the off season. For me, it worked out okay. It was off season for me.
The reason why I asked that is because for me, the severity of my injury increased the longer I waited to take time off, right? And that's usually how it goes. I mean, not all injuries are like that, but and I love how you keep talking about longevity in your career, because I would assume that's what everybody's hoping to do. I mean, we as musicians are not just doing music because we're like, oh, just do it. I mean, some people do it for fun and then they go do a different career, but those of us who want to make a career out of it, we want a long career, and
it's a lot of pressure, making, everybody needs a lawyer once in a while. Not everybody needs a trumpet player. Some people do once in a while. So, what we do is very special. And if we're fortunate enough and lucky enough and good enough to do the job, you can actually make a living doing this, but it's scary because you never know when that phone's going to ring. My phone could stop ringing today. They don't call anymore. They email now, but you know what I mean? So when I'm not getting emails for work from the service, I'm like, oh man, is my career over? Am I done? I've got my live gigs I do and stuff. Of course, like I do a lot of guest artist things, but that could just dry up too. I never know, I've kind of prepared my career, to be honest with you. Back in 2004, when I did my first CD, that was mainly as a calling card so I could start doing guest artist things.
Oh, cool. And
it worked. So I just figured, if this ever ends for me here, I've got a career on the side going already. So I could, if I'm done in the studios today, I can just start. All I have to do is contact a few people. I have an agent, and I could be on the road, playing at universities all the time. So it's a first world problem. I could, not necessarily, I don't want to do that all the time. I like doing it. I like the variety of work that I have. And, but I'm very lucky, and I never take that for granted at all. I feel very fortunate that I got through all these things, but just the fact that I can make a living playing, man, it's like, we have the best job in the world, man. It's actually a pretty good job if we can do it.
And I think people, when they are experiencing injury, they're afraid that's going to be like, to point out what you said. And I was just curious, does the union out there, do they have any sort of provisions? Because I know for injury in musicians, because I know that orchestras, they will, and I know this maybe write a little bit differently, but I've interviewed musicians who are professional orchestral musicians with symphonies, and they were able to still keep their job, but
that's they actually have an employer,
right.
It's like the union. The union has funds and things to help people that are down and out.
Oh, cool.
And there are grants and there's different things like that. I don't know. But for me, what saved me was disability.
Sure.
Unemployment. I took both those things at one time. And then I have a business. I have Wayne Bergeron Music Inc. I got a PPP loan. Mm-hmm. When I was, so that's how I survived this. And then, I get some royalty checks and things like that.
Yeah.
That I was able to survive on just fine. But I'm sure there's, I know the union has things in place for actors do as well.
Yeah.
Actors equity, fund. That actors that are down, there's health issues or whatever, or housing issues. So there is some of that. I didn't even look at any of that actually. So I wasn't that. I'm not as desperate as somebody else might be. Fortunately, knock on wood. So.
Well, I was just curious. So that people that may be freelance musicians, if that is a resource that they could use it, because like we've been saying, it's just we're after longevity and becoming a better musician throughout the rest of our career. And if we aren't willing to take the time to rest when we need to, I mean, that was one of the things that Bobby told me when I interviewed him, was that you got to take time off, or else it's just going to get,
It's really important. I think that's really important. And now it's interesting. I used to think, oh, I can't take any time off. I can't take it. Now I go on vacation. I went to Europe for 2 weeks. I did play, though. I ended up playing a concert in Switzerland. It was supposed to be a vacation, but I ended up playing with the Swiss Army Jazz Band at this festival. But, I just went on vacation. I turned down a bunch of work here and just go. It's a good position to be in, but as musicians, we're so used to like having the phone ring and saying, we don't want to say no to anything. Even as busy as I can be now, I don't like saying no to people when they call me. But I can't be, sometimes you've got another job, so you have to say no. Sometimes I might get out of a job to do another one if it's a big deal, but I will always ask, because you don't want to burn any bridges,
Right.
People have to be responsible. And so usually when I commit to something, I would say, 95% of the time I stick to my commitment. There might be that 5% where I'll go, oh boy, this is conflicting with the Oscars. I need to do the Oscars, and I'll ask, hey, is it possible to reschedule this? And usually they can, or they'll let me get out of it comfortably without any hard feelings or, so yeah, there's, it's stressful doing this,
Yeah.
So it's definitely a juggling act, for sure. So throwing, it's hard enough when things are going well.
Mm-hmm.
And then throw an injury in like you had, or cancer or whatever, throw that into the mix, and all of a sudden everything is throw some COVID in there, and everything's a mess all of a sudden, and your mental health as well.
Absolutely. Because, and that's a big focus here too.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for your time today, Wayne, and I just there's a few other questions I just want to ask real quick. Yeah. It recently in this season, we had been really have this come up last season, but it has been a topic this season of like, what would you wish that the musician community at large, those who haven't gone through injury, would understand about musicians going through an injury? Because I feel like we always want to help people when we care about them and we see that things are happening and going on, but a lot of times, if you haven't experienced this, you really don't know what to do. And so what would you?
Well, I think, and a lot of people have done this with me, and it's what I did. You have to not be afraid to reach out and ask some questions. As soon as I got cancer, I started researching people that had this cancer and just cold calling them, people I didn't even know that I found out through support group, and getting that support and asking those questions. So knowing what's with anything, knowing what's going to happen, having an idea is really important. Like all these people went through this and made it just fine. When I was going in for my first radiation treatment, it was a weird thing happened. There was this girl that I was in the elevator with, and I'd asked her, and I said, "Oh yeah." She goes, "Are you getting radiation?" She goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Man," and I'm scared. I just did my first one. She goes, "This is my last day." And I'm looking at her, I go, saying the same kind of cancer. I go, "She's doing okay. Look at her. She looks fine." And I talked to her for like 20 minutes. Her name was Perry. I still remember her name. And she actually made me cry when we were talking. I gave her a hug. And it was just one of those things. I was like, wow, why did that happen? But it was really inspiring for me. So she helped me a lot, whether she knows it or not. And so I've gone out of my way. I met, in fact, this guy, Alec Milstein, and he had this cancer, and we started a support group for this kind of cancer that we meet every month online on Zoom. And it was really helpful for me and helpful for those other people coming in. So an injury or sickness or anything, it's good to reach out. I mean, it's really important to seek out that information from people that have gone through it. And I've continued to, there's another trumpet player in town here, Nolan Shahid Smith, who just went through all this.
Oh, wow.
And he's kicking ass now. I matter of fact, uh, on a different topic, but the chemo they use for this is called cisplatin, and they use for head and neck injuries, and it's really hard on the ears. Like most people get hearing damage from it. So when I was reading this side effects, I was going, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know what I do for a living here. And so they did some research and they found out that this other chemo that could work on me, this stuff called carboplatin. So I did that, and I don't, I have just natural hearing loss, but the chemo didn't affect my hearing. So I've been recommending to those people to talk to their doctor and say, hey, and a lot of the doctors go, oh, no, that's not what we use. This is the gold standard for this. And this guy, Nolan Smith, said, I'm not doing this unless you use this chemo that my friend Wayne Bergeron said. So they said, okay. And his hearing is cool. And there's another person that started with the other chemo, and his ears were ringing the first week. And the doctor switched him, and his hearing's cool. So you got to ask questions, and you got to push back, even what the medical people say. Like, hey, man, is there another option here?
Their opinion, yeah.
It's that part's really important, I think.
Totally. Yeah, and it's that's beautiful what you did with that. For me personally, my mother went through cancer, and she started it wasn't a support group, but just sharing her experience online, and it helped other people, and going through her radiation. She's now perfectly healthy now, and
that's
so
great. It's really important to talk to people about it. That's why some people, like you asked earlier about, do you let your bosses know, your contractors?
Sure.
We want to let everybody know. You want them to, have some sort of, sympathy or whatever for the situation, but you don't let them know because you just don't know but your friends or strangers, it's okay. I've met a lot of strangers through this I'm now friends with. So
yeah, community is so important in these things.
So I'm sure that was great for your mother.
Yeah. So I ask 2 questions to all of my guests at the end of the show. And the first one is, and you kind of alluded to it, is if somebody were to come up to you and say, hey, I heard your interview on Trust the Process, and I'm going through my own injury, and it could be like a cellist or something. It doesn't have to be a trumpet player. And they ask you for a piece of advice. What would that be? And the reason why I asked that is because actually it's funny, our mutual friend, Jose Johnson, the reason why I asked that question is because of his podcast. And I had heard somebody on his show had gone through an injury, and he did I think he had spliced a bunch of clips together from his show dedicated to people getting through chop problems. And so I reached out to somebody through there and developed a really important connection that I now have. And so I want to be able to give other people that opportunity through this show. And so what would you say to that musician?
Well, I mean, I don't know. We probably talked about it already. I think thinking outside the box, when you do this for a long time, you're doing it a certain way, you're playing the cello a certain way. All of a sudden you're hurt. And this would be for a sports person or whatever.
Absolutely.
And you had carpal tunnel surgery or whatever. And then you're putting that bow up there and it's not the same. And a great Boyd Hood, who I used to study some trumpet with years ago from USC, I went through another thing I went through a dental thing many, many years ago. And I had my teeth fixed. And anyway, it was quite a struggle for me. And I was at a lesson with him and I was going, oh, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. And he goes, I have to stop you. He goes, you keep telling me about how it feels. He goes, it's never going to feel like that again. He goes, you're looking for something that doesn't exist. Your teeth are different. And so I would recommend that to whatever injury they've had or whatever, that it's not going to be the same. So that muscle memory they used to have, if they broke their wrist, when it's put back together, it's going to be different. And so that's when you have to start experimenting and getting advice. I know a lot of string players, are into Alexander technique and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that, and a lot of people were suggesting that to me even, when I was going through my stuff. So, but I think that you're going to have to start thinking outside the box because it is different. Totally. And if you keep searching for this thing that's not there, and I go through this with students all the time that have learned to play with a bad habit one way. and it's not working, and I'm trying to get them to do something else because this is not going to work. It's really hard to get off that path. So that's the most difficult part about it, is letting all that go and kind of starting like a beginner almost. I mean, you're not a beginner musician, but you have to forget that feel of it, when it's a string hand or if it's a bowing hand or whatever, how your arm is moving. And somebody like, doing Alexander Ticket might see something like,
Sure.
oh, this, and I think it's really important to follow the sound
Absolutely.
on any instrument.
Yeah.
So if I put the trumpet up to my face and let's say I've gotten my teeth bashed out and I have new teeth now, then I put the trumpet over here and that's making the greatest sound. That's probably where I'm going to learn to play.
And if it's physically easier,
Yeah. So
that's all you
have
need
to
to
go,
know.
okay, well, I'm following the sound. It sounds best there. So that's probably the most efficient place to be playing. Now, that's probably not really the case, but if your teeth were, like if you had your front teeth went like this a little bit, you're going to be off to the side a little, otherwise you'd have a knife in the middle of your lip.
Right.
So finding that place that feels good but also sounds good. And I sat around, nothing felt the same for me, especially after the dental thing was probably, out of all those things I mentioned, as sucky as they all were, the dental thing was the hardest thing to come back from because I couldn't feel.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't even have anything to look for. I can't feel anything.
Sure.
So I was having to truly just follow the sound, and I would put the horn up, and this here it wouldn't be mush, and I just have to play a note and go. And it would feel awful here, but it would sound good. And if I would twist and try to do all these other things, all of a sudden my sound would get tight and the resonance was gone. So if you follow the resonance, I think, of tone, and a gazillion teachers have probably told you that too, follow the sound.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was a huge thing.
Joan Racy always said that, and play with reverence. And I think, and I think you can find your way. But it takes a lot of patience. It's frustrating. We want it fast, especially if we know how it used to work. A beginner's different, but players like you and I, we know what we could do, and why can't we do that?
Right.
So.
Well, it's that curiosity has probably been the thing that's kept me in the game, is learning, oh, this is where I can get to.
Yeah.
And then I wonder how I'm going to get there. And obviously I do that with the help of my teachers and medical professionals as needed and stuff like that. But I feel like that curiosity helps us take the anxiety out of it. It just helps us observe rather than really anxiously try to control everything.
Yeah. And I think just in general, setting shorter term goals, because a lot of times, whether we realize it or not, even though we're struggling through something, we are improving.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm ever even looking back and going, hey, I couldn't do that a few weeks ago. It was just a little milestone. One of the weird things, like this top note for me, that G, when I was coming back would go. And I had 2 vibrations in here. And so we're getting a double buzz, and I could not stop it. And so because this was weak, and I couldn't make one aperture. So I started thinking about, you got to get this strong again. So I started, my friend Annie Bosler, she gave me some facial exercises to do, which I still do in the car, the different things, but like you pull down and hold, pull up on one side, you isolate all the muscles to get this strong again. And that helped me. I actually got a device. This guy, Larry Mergolano, has this device called the CTS. Oh, yeah. Pressure training system. And I talked to him about it a little bit, and I think it helped me because my chops, they were weak. And so I use a mouthpiece and you blow, you basically just do this. Right. Use mouth compression, but it activates the embouchure. Between the two of those things, it kind of helped me. So, don't be afraid of it. It is partly physical, it's mental, and it's following the sound and all that. But there's a physical we have to look at all of it. We have to look at the science that surrounds every problem and figure out how to solve it.
Totally.
You know, and you know, people overcome this crap. Well, I've seen people with cut lips that come back, and Bell's palsy and come back, and focal dystonia and come back. My friend, one of my colleagues here, a trombone player, he's been dealing with focal dystonia for a couple of years, but man, he's come a long way. You know, and he's figuring it out, and it's completely playing differently, thinking outside the box. So
totally,
that's important thing to remember.
It's that patience. The last question I have for you, this is my favorite question to ask all my guests, is if you could go back to, pick your injury. I guess you could just say in general, to all those moments of your injury, and you had the opportunity to either take away those experiences or leave them there and thinking about everything that you've overcome and learned, what would you choose to do?
I mean, which one would I gotten rid of?
Well, if you would get rid of them at all, or if you would leave them there.
You know, this works with relationships or whatever, you know. I've been married 3 times. And some of it was ugly, some of it was beautiful. But it led me to where I'm at now. So would I change anything? I don't think so. I wish I didn't get cancer.
Oh, of course.
I wish I didn't have these things happen to me. But all in all, I look at all this, man, I learned a bunch of stuff. And it was a horrible school.
Yeah. School of hard knocks, right?
But I learned a lot. And so it's just destiny, maybe, you know. I guess. I'm not even sure, you know, but that's how I feel. So would I change anything? I don't think so. I think I'm doing really well now. You know, I'm working. My chops feel really good. My wife and I, we have a great relationship. You know, I got all this good stuff happening in my life. Nothing's perfect, you know.
Sure.
But if I changed something, maybe it wouldn't be as good. Maybe something else would happen, you know. So you always have to think about where you're at for a reason, and whatever happened before led to that, whether it was good or bad.
Yeah. And to what you said earlier, you said that you're a better player now than you were before, and
I am a better player.
Those experiences helped you get there, you know.
Yeah. So it's and I feel like it makes me a little bit better teacher.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I learned from these other people, these other teachers too. I steal shit from everybody. When I see somebody after class, I go, "That's a good point. I'm going to start talking about that."
Yeah.
You know, and I've seen people take my stuff. I go, "Oh, they got that from me." You know, so
totally.
Which is okay. We're just sharing information, so it's, you know, not really stealing. It's just getting it out there to the people that need it, which
absolutely
is important thing. So, how are you doing now, man? How's your chops?
Well, I'm still working with some specialists. The thing that has really taken some time is, since the injury, I've been dealing with some pinching in my lip, and I've been fortunate to be able to get connected with some very highly specialized physiotherapists. Dr. Bronwyn Ackerman. Shout out to her, because she is a wizard, or a magician, maybe, of that kind of thing, and she's helped people in my situation before. So I'm kind of using this time to just focus on sharing these stories and get back as quickly as I can, healthfully, you know. And
so the muscle on you, though, just where is it at? Where is it?
It tore actually both on the contact points.
And it heals. I'm sorry. It will heal itself, correctly?
No, yeah, and it did heal. So it's just something weird with the nerves. I had a procedure done that healed it quicker than if it had just full rest. But just some, you know, still trying to figure out what caused it. But
and what it's making you think about when you play, I'm sure it makes you think about, okay, I don't want to.
Yeah, and that's the mental game is the hardest part, you know.
But that's when like this efficiency thing comes into play, and we realize all you have to do is watch somebody like Alan Bazzuti play.
Oh yeah.
And close up of him, and you go, you know what? There's an easier way to do this. Brute force works great, You can mash your way through anything, but it's like throwing a baseball, and all you do is throw a fastball as hard as you can. You might be really good at it. You're going to do some damage.
Right.
Maybe you should get an arsenal of pitches you can use, and you throw that fastball once in a while, and you get the job done that way. And I'm not even a sports guy, and I'm using all these sports analogy. I don't know why.
Well, what I've learned through this podcast is musicians are just athletes of small muscles, and some of the people that I interview, they're nutritionists and athletes that are also musicians that help other musicians get back to health, and so grateful for.
So you're playing again, though, right? You're playing.
Not quite. I kind of had to graduate early so I could focus on my recovery.
We'll get recovered, and then what I want you to do is I want you to call me.
Oh, sounds good.
And let's talk about getting you back.
That'd be great.
I'm good at.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
This I can help with for sure. So
for sure. Well, thank you so much, Wayne, and to everybody out there listening in podcast land. I'm just so grateful for your time and you sharing this experience with us. And keep on keeping on, guys, and keep trusting the process. Until next time.
Thank you, brother.
Hey, before you go, we need your help with something real quick. Somewhere out there's a musician who is going through an injury or just a tough time. There may even be an educator with a student in that situation that they don't know how to help. We need your help in getting this message to them. Would you do them the favor of sharing this episode on your socials and with your friends? Also, cliche that it may have become, leaving a rating and a review actually does help people find us, not just boost our ego. So would you take a quick second and leave us a review so that musician can find us more easily? If you want to reach out to me personally, I would love to hear from you. Just look for the send us a text message button in the show notes of the episode. You can do that on any episode on your chosen podcast platform except YouTube. If you have a suggestion for a guest or topic to cover, shoot me an email at trustprocesspodcast@gmail.com or send me a message on Facebook or Instagram. I want to extend another heartfelt thanks to my team, without which this podcast would not be able to happen. Thanks to Daniel Baldwin, our audio engineer, Kevin West, our music and sound effects coordinator, and Dana Lovell, our promotional materials coordinator. So to all of you out there in podcast land, keep on keeping on and trust the process.